Hey, I'm Kimberly. If you're listening to this, I guess you could say I'm deep in the throes of a twisted tale, one I never expected to live out. It's raw, it's personal, and it might just hit close to home for some of you. So grab a seat, because this story is a roller coaster, and it all starts in the bustling heart of Chicago, where beneath the shimmering skyline, I found myself entangled with a man who would turn my world upside down. The moment I met Derek, it was as if he had stepped straight out of a romance novel. With his charming smile and that effortless charisma, he could light up the darkest rooms. Everyone adored him, and at first, so did I. He was the life of every party, the guy who effortlessly navigated conversations and had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. But, as they say, nothing is ever as it seems. We met at a trendy coffee shop called The Daily Grind, a place filled with the rich aroma of fresh espresso and the sound of clinking cups. I had just moved to the city, struggling to find my footing after a tough breakup, and Derek seemed to embody everything I thought I wanted. We hit it off instantly, or at least I thought we did. Little did I know, I had unknowingly signed up for a masterclass in manipulation. My closest friends, Sarah and Mia, were wary of Derek from the start. They'd roll their eyes and give me that knowing look whenever I mentioned him, but I brushed aside their concerns. "You're just jealous," I'd chuckle, oblivious to the cracks that were beginning to form in the facade he had so skillfully crafted. They couldn't see what I saw, the dreamy moments, the late-night conversations filled with laughter. They hadn't felt the rush of excitement that came with every text from him. But it didn't take long for the reality to seep in, like a slow poison. Over the course of the months, the charming persona began to unravel. With Derek, love was an illusion wrapped in a shiny bow, but soon, that bow began to fray. His need for validation morphed into control. Every compliment he'd given me was laced with a condition, and every loving moment was followed by a sting, a reminder that I was never quite good enough. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself caught in his web. Friends and family became distant memories. I was isolated, a prisoner in my own mind, questioning my worth with every dismissive glance he threw my way. I watched helplessly as he perfected the art of gaslighting, turning my reality into something I couldn't recognize. But here's the twist that no one saw coming, not even me. It was during one of those late-night conversations when he casually mentioned his ex-girlfriend, Emily, with such disdain that it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he spoke, the venom behind every syllable. That's when the seed of revenge was planted in my heart, and from then on, it would grow into a twisted obsession. Now, as I sit here, recounting this bizarre chapter of my life, I realize that revenge isn't just a plot in a story, it's a journey, a path I never wanted to walk, but here I am, ready to take the first step. And this time, it's my turn to be heard. It's time to face the narcissist of the highest caliber and show him that I won't be silenced any longer. So, buckle up as I unveil the thrilling and dark details of my plan, the lessons learned, and the indelible mark this experience has left on me. Revenge may not be sweet, but oh, was it ever satisfying. The day everything changed began like any other. The sun streamed through my apartment window, filtering through the thin curtains as I sipped my morning coffee, an elixir of hope I clung to in the dwindling light of my reality. Derek had stayed over, his presence a magnet that drew me in. Yet I felt horrified by the shadows lurking behind his charming smile. That day, I should have sensed the storm brewing beneath the surface. Instead, I was blissfully ignorant. I had planned a dinner for us, hoping to rekindle the magic we once had. I wanted to show him that I still believed in us, that I still believed in love. I meticulously prepared his favorite meal, hoping to recreate those early days filled with laughter and warmth. As I stirred the sauce, my heart raced with excitement. Finally, I thought, maybe tonight would be different. But the moment he walked in, his expression shifted. I felt that familiar chill creep down my spine as he glanced around, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face as he realized I hadn't done enough. "Did you actually think I'd want to just eat at home tonight?" he sneered, shrugging off my efforts as if they were nothing more than a pathetic joke. My heart plummeted. I had poured my soul into that meal, and he had tossed it away like yesterday's trash. Trying to regain my footing, I suggested a nice restaurant nearby. But instead of appreciation, I was met with a dismissive wave as he turned toward his phone. He was scrolling, immersed in his own world while I stood there, a ghost in my own home, feeling the walls close in around me. Hours later, after yet another failed attempt at connection, I snapped. "Why do you treat me like this? Why do you make me feel so small?" I blurted out, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and defeat. He looked up from his screen, genuinely taken aback, as if he had no idea what I was talking about. "Oh, come on, Kimberly. You're being dramatic," he replied, veering into that all too familiar territory, belittlement. "You're lucky to be with me. Just look at yourself. A little self-awareness would go a long way." Those words cut deeper than any knife. It felt as if he had stripped away my entire identity, layer by layer, leaving me raw and exposed. Had I really let myself be reduced to this trembling shadow of who I once was? The realization crashed over me like a wave, and suddenly, the memory of Emily resurfaced, haunting me like a specter. I remembered how he had disparaged her, how he'd made her seem vindictive and malicious when all I could see was a woman who had once loved him. I felt her pain morphing with my own, intertwining in a desperate plea for justice. That night, it hit me: Derek didn't just manipulate me, he was a master of emotional destruction, a narcissist who needed to feel superior at all costs. I had been a pawn in his game, but not anymore. In that moment of anguish, something inside me snapped, igniting a fire that I never knew existed. I could either wallow in my misery or channel that rage toward something more powerful, something that would show Derek the truth of his own cruelty. The next day, I turned my focus toward Emily. I reached out to her, my fingers trembling as I typed the message. I told her everything: how he spoke of her, how he treated me, and how I had seen the cracks in his facade. Through exchanged words, I found a friend in her, a comrade who had suffered at the hands of a man who had no regard for anyone but himself. Little did Derek know, I was beginning to plot a way to expose him, to unveil the intricate web of lies he had spun around all of us. As I worked with Emily to gather evidence of Derek's manipulation, text messages, stories of emotional abuse, and shared experiences, I could feel my resolve strengthening. No longer would I remain a victim, cowering in the shadows of his toxic behavior. I wanted Derek to feel the same despair, the same sense of loss that he had inflicted on so many. With each passing day, my emotions transformed from sorrow to determination. I was no longer just Kimberly, the love-struck girl. I was a force to be reckoned with, fueled by the betrayal and injustice I had endured. As I prepared to set my plan in motion, the realization settled in that revenge might not only offer satisfaction but a sense of closure I had yearned for since the very beginning. And so began my journey of vengeance, drawing the curtain back on the narcissist of the highest caliber, Derek, who had underestimated the strength that lay dormant within me. I was as the days turned into weeks, I noticed a shift in my demeanor. The quiet resolve I had uncovered began to give way to a darker energy, a thrill that coursed through me with each piece of evidence I gathered against Derek. My emotions, once a chaotic storm of love, confusion, and despair, turned into a laser-focused mission. However, as I delved deeper, things escalated in a way I hadn't anticipated. Derek was clever. He could sense the change in me, the way I had begun to stand my ground during our conversations. His charm faded into annoyance. One evening, We were out with friends, and I dared to laugh a little too freely, sharing an inside joke with Mia. I could feel his gaze burning into me, his hostility palpable. Afterward, he pulled me aside, his voice low and menacing. "You think you're so funny, don't you? You think your little games will make me forget who's in control?" The threat hung heavy in the air, and I felt the cocktail of fear and anger twist in my stomach. But it only fueled my resolve. I was no longer a puppet dancing to his tune, I was the knife hidden beneath the silk. Each verbal jab he threw my way, every belittling comment, solidified my plan. It became a sick game, who could outwit the other. I toyed with the idea that if he was going to play the villain, I might as well play the part of an avenger. Then there was that night, the night that would ignite the chain of events that would lead to my ultimate confrontation with him. I had spent hours preparing for a party Derek was throwing at his apartment. As I set out my outfit, something daring, something confident, I felt empowered. But the moment I walked through the door, wearing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes, I was hit with a tidal wave of Derek's narcissistic energy. His attention was fixed on me, but it wasn't admiration I saw, it was barely contained contempt. "Wow, you clean up nice, Kimberly," he said, with a smirk. "Did you pull out all the stops for me tonight?" His friends laughed, but it was the way he said it, like I was a cheap, hastily assembled outfit he picked up at a discount store. I held my chin high, the resolve I'd been nurturing bubbling to the surface. "I'd say I'm dressing for myself, not just for you," I replied, feeling an unfamiliar heaviness lift from my chest. But that only seemed to agitate him more. Throughout the night, he would make snide remarks, cutting glances in my direction whenever I engaged with others. It became an unbearable game of humiliation. He was artfully weaving a narrative that turned everyone against me, painting me as dramatic and overreactive. As the laughter of his friends echoed through the room, I felt invisible, drowning in my own agony while he thrived in his kingdom of narcissism. The tension was suffocating. I had to get out. I excused myself and stepped out onto the balcony, cold air wrapping around me like a lifeline. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Emily. "Don't let him get to you. Remember, you're strong. You can do this." Tears stung my eyes as I read her words. She had become my anchor in this storm. I took a deep breath, wiping my eyes and trying to reclaim the courage I felt slipping away. But just then, the door swung open, and there he stood, Derek, the embodiment of chaos. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded, his tone sharp, slicing through the serene night. "Hiding? You know, you're not that special. Don't think you can just decide when to show others your little strong side." I felt that mix of anger and despair crash into me again. "I'm not hiding. I'm taking a moment because being around you is exhausting," I fired back, each word resonating with the determination I had been cultivating. His eyes darkened, and he stepped closer, invading my personal space, his breath hot against my face. "You think you're tough, huh? You're just a scared little girl trying to prove herself. You don't want to mess with me, Kimberly. You have no idea who you're dealing with." His threats sent shivers down my spine, but within me, that fire blazed brighter. I wasn't scared. I was emboldened. I stood my ground, meeting his gaze unflinchingly, and in that moment, I realized how far I'd come. The little girl he once berated was now on the cusp of destroying the very foundation of his carefully crafted world. My heart raced as I held my ground, feeling the tension pulsate between us like an electric current. Derek's face contorted with rage, and I relished the madness in his eyes. He thought he could intimidate me, toy with my emotions like I was a marionette dangling on strings he controlled. But as I stood there, bathed in the pale light of the moon, I felt a shift inside me, an awakening, a clarity that sliced through the fog of despair he had wrapped around me. "You don't scare me anymore," I declared, the words spilling from my lips like molten lava, hot and fierce. A strange sense of power surged through me, igniting that ember of revenge I'd been nursing for weeks. In his twisted world where he wore the crown, I suddenly saw the path laid out before me. What if I could turn the tables and show him that the very tactics he used to manipulate and belittle could be his downfall? In that moment, I recalled how he had spoken of Emily, his ex-girlfriend, with such venom. It had ignited something in me then, but standing here now, it felt like a complete revelation. I no longer wanted just to survive, I wanted to dismantle his empire of deceit brick by brick. I envisioned Emily by my side, the two of us standing tall against the tide of Derek's narcissism. He had painted us both as weak, but together, we could be formidable. "Tell me, Derek," I pressed, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning within. "What are you so afraid of? Is it that I might actually stand up for myself? That I might expose you for who you really are?" For a moment, he looked taken aback, as if my words were foreign to him. His bravado wavered, and I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Was he truly the all-powerful ruler he believed himself to be? "I'm not afraid of you, Kimberly," he spat, but I could hear the lie woven into his tone. "You're nothing without me." And that's when it hit me, the realization burned brighter than anything I'd felt before. I had spent so long believing I was nothing without him, that I needed his validation to be whole. But in this moment, in this raw confrontation, I felt the shackles of his control shatter around me. I was not just the girl he had manipulated, I was a woman rediscovering her strength. It was time to take action. I was ready to harness this newfound clarity and use it as a weapon. I had the power to expose him, not just to myself but to everyone in his carefully curated world. He had crafted a narrative where he reigned supreme, but I realized that I could rewrite that story, our story. The thought of Emily standing by my side filled me with determination. I could almost hear her laughter, feel her unwavering support echoing through my mind. Together, we could make him regret ever underestimating us. I wanted Derek to feel the very loneliness he had inflicted upon me, to face the emptiness of a world stripped of his facade. The plan began to take shape in my mind, crystallizing like a clear picture in a foggy room. I needed to gather evidence, text messages, voicemails, any trace of his cruel words and manipulative tactics, and I needed to do it fast. I imagined a confrontation that would leave him exposed and vulnerable, revealing the monster beneath the charming mask. Suddenly, I saw myself standing before a gathering of friends, the very people he had manipulated into believing his lies. I would unveil the truth, letting darkness spill into the light. The only way to eradicate a narcissist of the highest caliber was to shine the spotlight directly on him, and I was ready to take that step. As I turned to walk back into the party, I felt a surge of adrenaline rush through me. The shadows of uncertainty and self-doubt began to dissipate, replaced with a fierce determination. Derek would no longer be the puppeteer pulling my strings, he would face the consequences of his actions. With Emily's support and my resolve, I was no longer a victim, I was a warrior ready to wage war against the man who had tried to steal my light. As I stepped back into the party, I felt a smile dance on my lips, a predatory smile filled with purpose. I would make Derek pay, not out of spite but to reclaim the narrative he had woven around our lives. I was ready to step into the darkness and confront the narcissist of the highest caliber, and I would emerge victorious. I spent the next few days spiraling with excitement and anxiety, plotting every detail of the plan that would serve justice, not only to Derek but also to the countless others who had fallen victim to his charm. The scheme unfolded like a blueprint in my mind, each layer intricately designed to expose him in a way that would leave no room for denial or manipulation. The foundation of my plan hinged on concrete proof of his manipulative behavior. I contacted Emily, and together, we started documenting everything. We crafted a shared folder on Google Drive, a secret repository for our evidence. I gathered screenshots of all the text messages where Derek belittled me, where he flirted with other women while I languished in silence. I even recorded his voice during our conversations, where the insidious gaslighting seeped out like poison. Emily shared her experiences, recalling Derek's condescending messages, his dismissive comments, the times he had belittled her achievements. It was cathartic for both of us to validate each other's pain. We were no longer isolated victims. Instead, we became allies against a common enemy. Our compilation of evidence grew daily. Each entry filled me with a mix of dread and excitement, as if I were collecting ammunition for the battle ahead. But I kept reminding myself that this was not just about revenge, this was about reclaiming our identities and standing up against his brand of cruelty. Next, I set out to cultivate a network of allies. I reached out to mutual friends to gauge their perspectives about Derek, subtly steering conversations toward stories of his behavior. Some friends revealed their discomfort with how he treated me, while others admitted they had witnessed similar moments of his arrogance and condescension with Emily. The more I sought out these opinions, the more emboldened I felt. Mia and Sarah played pivotal roles in preparing for the climax of my plan. They were fiercely loyal and supportive and offered to be part of the gathering I envisioned, a gathering where Derek would finally be held accountable. I began painting a picture of a dinner party, an evening where everyone would have a chance to contribute to the conversation, to shed light on the toxic nature of Derek's behavior. I secured a date for the get-together, an elaborate dinner at my apartment. I meticulously planned the details, aiming to create an atmosphere that felt warm and inviting, yet charged with tension. I invited close friends who were already skeptical of Derek, those who had seen his true colors but hadn't had the opportunity to express their feelings in front of him. On the night of the dinner, the table was set to perfection, adorned with candles and delicate floral arrangements. But behind the facade of normalcy, I felt the weight of anticipation in the air. Emily arrived early, and we shared a knowing glance. Our battle was about to begin. As guests trickled in, the energy shifted. Laughter and chatter filled the room, but I felt my heart race as I anticipated Derek's arrival. When he finally walked through the door, I could see the flicker of arrogance in his eyes, the charming smile ready to distract everyone from the truth lurking beneath his surface. Dinner progressed with typical small talk, but I knew the time would come soon. As we shifted to the living room, I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. It was time to unveil the truth. I took a deep breath, knowing this was my moment. "Thanks for coming, everyone," I began, my voice steady despite the quiver of excitement flooding through me. Tonight, I wanted to celebrate friendship, and also to shed light on something serious. I know Derek has shared stories of his past relationships, particularly with Emily, and I believe it's essential that we discuss the impact his behavior has had on those around him. Gasps erupted from some of my friends, while others exchanged furtive glances. Derek's face paled. For a moment, the mask slipped. "Are you serious?" he scoffed, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. "This is ridiculous. I thought this was a friendly dinner, not an attack." I pressed on, undeterred. "This is an important conversation, Derek. We're all friends here, and friends should support one another. Emily, would you like to share your experiences?" As Emily stood to speak, I could see Derek's expression shift from incredulous amusement to a mask of growing panic. He opened and closed his mouth, searching for words but unable to form a coherent response. Emily's voice rang out, powerful and unwavering, as she recounted the moments of emotional manipulation she had endured, the feelings of inadequacy that had plagued her long after their relationship ended. Step 5. The tension in the room thickened as Emily spoke, her voice steady and filled with emotion. Her words poured out like a dam bursting, igniting memories and feelings among the guests that had long been buried. I thought I was crazy, you know. I believed I was the problem, she said, her gaze unwavering as she turned to Derek. But now I see that it was you all along. You twisted my reality until I no longer recognized myself. Derek's face flushed crimson, the mask of charm slipping further as sweat beaded on his forehead. The laughter and lightness of the evening were replaced by a palpable tension, with everyone hanging on Emily's every word. I remember the moments when you would play mind games with me, Derek, she continued, her voice rising with conviction. Every time I tried to voice my feelings, you'd turn it around on me, making me feel like I was overreacting. It was suffocating. I could feel Derek's eyes darting around the room, searching for an ally, a foothold in the chaos unfolding around him. But the faces of our friends, Mia, Sarah, and even some of Derek's own buddies, had transformed from friendly smiles into expressions of concern and empathy. The power dynamic was shifting, and I reveled in it. Listen, this is all nonsense, Derek interjected sharply, desperation creeping into his tone. You're both just bitter ex-girlfriends trying to ruin my night. You need to grow up. Is that really your defense? I shot back, cutting through his attempt at dismissal like a knife. Do you think calling us bitter will erase the truth? You've spent your life creating this illusion, this perfect facade, and it's time we brought it crashing down. As I spoke, I felt a surge of power wash over me. The words felt like a rallying cry, a declaration of my newfound strength. The room felt charged, as if everyone could sense the reckoning at hand. Let's not forget the countless times you made people feel inferior to you, I continued, my heart racing. How you belittle Mia's achievements or mock Sarah's dreams. You don't get to play the victim anymore. Derek's facade of confidence began to crack, his snide remarks replaced by a creeping terror as the weight of our words pressed down on him. He was trapped in a corner, and we were the hunters ready to make a kill. You think you can just bully everyone into silence? I asked, my voice firm and unyielding. You've thrived on fear and insecurity, but tonight, that ends. We will not be silenced any longer. The guests began murmuring in agreement, and for the first time, I saw the tide turn. People began to share their own stories, their own moments of discomfort around Derek, moments he had brushed off as trivial. Laughter began to fade as the gravity of what he had done seeped into the atmosphere. One friend, Jason, spoke up. I remember when you made fun of me for not landing that promotion, Derek. You laughed and said I'd never be good enough for the job. It's time you faced the consequences of your actions. Each voice added weight to our collective truth, and with every word shared, Derek's bravado dwindled. He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting back and forth, desperately trying to regain control over the room. But the truth had broken through his carefully constructed walls, and it felt so liberating. Derek, I said, leaning in slightly to catch his gaze, you've manipulated all of us for too long. But this isn't just about revenge, it's about healing. It's about reclaiming our power and standing against the toxicity you represent. As I spoke those words, the mood shifted further, almost like the clouds parting to reveal the sun. There was an energy in the room now, a shared understanding of the reality Derek had tried to obscure. The shock on Derek's face morphed into a mixture of rage and disbelief. You all are just jealous. You can't blame me for your failures, he spat, desperately attempting to shift the narrative. But it was too late. The cracks in his facade were showing, and the unraveling had begun. Jealous? No, Derek. We're tired, I corrected him calmly. Tired of feeling like we have to walk on eggshells around you, tired of your egotistical behavior that steals the light from everyone else in the room. It's time for accountability. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's bravado had all but collapsed, leaving him exposed in front of the friends he had once commanded. It was then that I noticed the glimmer of recognition in the air hung heavy in the room after our confrontation, like the final notes of a symphony cascading into silence. Derek stood there, a broken man, stripped of the power he had so skillfully wielded. I could see the realization dawning in his eyes: he was no longer in control of the narrative. I felt a mix of exhilaration and disbelief as the weight of everything that had transpired began to settle in. What happened next was almost surreal. With every word spoken against him, I felt a layer of my own pain lifting. Friends who had once viewed me with sympathy now surrounded me with support, offering nods of understanding and words of encouragement. They shared their stories of courage, resilience, and the struggle of breaking free from toxic relationships. It was as though we were weaving an invisible tapestry of healing, each thread intertwining our experiences, casting a warm glow over the room. But for Derek, the atmosphere shifted from one of camaraderie to an abyss of humiliation. He could only stand there, dumbfounded, as the weight of our shared truths pulled him down into despair. Emotional outbursts rolled through his being, first denial, then feigned laughter, and finally, anger bubbling forth like a volcano ready to erupt. "You're all making a mistake," he spat, voice laced with venom. "You don't know what you're talking about. I'm better than all of you." At that moment, the laughter and camaraderie faded into a solemn hush. I watched as my friends exchanged looks of concern, their faces revealing a mixture of sympathy and frustration. They weren't there to judge but to witness the reality of a man who had fully revealed himself, a man who thrived on chaos, who reveled in diminishing others to elevate his own sense of worth. My heart raced as I confronted Derek again. "You don't get to shift the blame anymore. Your words have consequences. We're not here to diminish you, we're here to reclaim our stories. And you've lost all power over us tonight." He took a step back, as if my words physically struck him. I could almost see the gears turning in his mind, trying to concoct a plan to regain his footing. But the curtain had been drawn back, and the audience had seen the dark magic behind the puppet show. Derek was no longer the king in his kingdom, he was a man standing in the ruins of his empire, surrounded by the laughter of those who had taken back their joy. As the evening progressed, I noticed how the energy shifted. Friends took turns sharing their own experiences, moments Derek had casually dismissed or belittled. It felt cathartic, like a collective exorcism, as we laid bare the wounds he had inflicted, visible or not. I glanced at Emily, who was beaming with pride as she spoke about her own journey of healing. We had turned from victims into warriors, armed with the truth. When the night finally drew to a close, the guests gradually filtered out, leaving behind a sense of camaraderie and empowerment. My apartment, once a space of chaos and despair, felt like a sanctuary of resilience. Derek had stormed out after the confrontation, his ego shattered and his reputation in tatters, but I felt no remorse for him. He had created this ripple of devastation, and now it was crashing back upon him, unraveling everything he had carefully constructed. In the following days, the aftermath of that dinner party reverberated through my life like an echo. I had expected some backlash. After all, no one ever walks away unscathed from a confrontation with a narcissist. But what I didn't anticipate was the wave of support that flooded in from my friends and family. They rallied around me, emboldened by the stand I had taken. They sent messages, called to check in, and even shared their own experiences of overcoming toxic relationships, bolstering my belief that I had not just conquered Derek, but had also created a safe space for others to find their voices. Yet, as much as I reveled in this newfound empowerment, I couldn't shake the residual feelings of anxiety that crept in. Derek had been a fixture in my life, and his sudden absence left me grappling with the remnants of fear he'd instilled in me. I realized I had to confront the emotional scars he had left behind, the invisible bruises that still lingered beneath the surface. Despite feeling empowered, I decided to seek therapy. I wanted to unlock the chains he'd wrapped around my heart and mind, to explore the depths of my own self-worth beyond the confines of his manipulation. Each session became a journey of rediscovery, where the therapist helped me untangle the threads woven into my psyche, reminding me that I was worthy, strong, and deserving of love. I also learned that revenge doesn't always mean retribution.